If you have a new KRX4 1000, then odds are you're ready to add some accessories to it. And if you want to save some money over the OEM accessories, you're going to want to look at the Tusk UTV Upgrade Kits. You've got 3 different options, and that way you can choose the one that best suits your needs. Today we're going to be installing a Stage 3 UTV Upgrade Kit, and that's going to be the premium option from Tusk. And what it comes with is your folding glass windshield, your pivot folding mirrors with A-pillar mounts, a rear glass window, a cargo barricade, and the 5th item in the kit depends on which KRX4 that you have. So if you have an ES model that did not come with a roof from the factory, you're going to be getting a profile aluminum roof. But if you had an ES special edition or just an SE model, then you're going to be getting some rock sliders, since those already came with the roof from the factory. But in either case, you want to type in your year, make, and model on our website, and that way you make sure you get the correct kit for your machine. Now, with all that being said, you know, all of this stuff is pretty simple to install, so let's go ahead and get started. We're going to start out in the back of the machine with the cargo barricade. To install that, we need to remove the 2 hooks in the back of the bed. So I've got my 12mm T-handle for that. There should be a spacer underneath this hook. You want to leave that in place. And then you have your spacer block. We're not going to use the bolt we just took out. We're going to use the longer bolt that came in the kit. And I'm going to leave that loose so we can make adjustments. We're going to do the same thing on the other side as well. After that, we're going to remove the 4 bolts in the back of the roll cage. I'm using a 17mm socket. Then we've got 2 washers that came in our kit. They're going to sit in the little groove in the back of the roll cage. Then we're going to do the same thing on the other side. Pro tip, you can use a little bit of grease to hold these washers in place. We'll set the cargo barricade in place, and then we're going to use the 2 shorter bolts into those aluminum spacers we previously installed. The next step is to reinstall the roll cage mounting bolts that we previously removed. And to do that, you're probably going to have to use an alignment punch, just because this roll cage is probably not going to be perfectly aligned. Once you have all the bolts loosely installed, you want to go back through and tighten everything down. To prep the roof, we need to apply some foam tape to the roll cage. So right on top here, on the cross members, we're going to start with the front. That's going to be your 40-inch foam tape gasket. Then in the middle, you've got the 46-inch piece. And then in the back, you're going to install the 45-inch piece. Now on the sides, you're going to take the 2 69-inch pieces and go all the way down. Now once you have the foam tape in place, it's a good idea to dry fit your rear window, and that way you can see where the clamps are going to go. And then you want to make 2 little cutouts where those clamps will be. Next, we're going to set the rear section of the roof into place. And then in the back corners, we have the M8 by 25mm button head bolts. We're going to put a washer on there. We're going through the top of the roof, and then we've got an 1/8-inch spacer underneath in between the roof and the gusset. And then you're going to put the nylock nut on the back side. Now we're going to install the front section of the roof, and this is going to overlap the rear roof. Now for the middle mounts, again, we're going to use the M8 by 25mm button head bolts. We've got the washer. We're going through both sections of the roof. Then again, you have an 1/8-inch spacer. Go through the gusset in the frame, and then the nylock nut on the back side. Now for the front mounts, these are going to be the thinner bolts. So these are the M6 by 25mm button head bolts. We've got the washer on, and then on these ones, you're using the 1/4-inch spacer. And again, that's just between the roof and the gusset. And then you've got the nylock nut on the back side. Now we need to install some hardware into the middle of the roof. So we're going to use the M6 by 16 button head bolts. There's 5 of them. You're going to install a washer on there, put those through the roof, and you've got the nylock flange nut on the back side. Now that we have everything loosely installed, you want to adjust everything for optimal fitment and tighten all the hardware down. Now we're going to start our tightening process in the front and work our way back. And since we're installing a rear window, we do want to leave these back two mounting bolts loose until we have that rear window installed. Next, we need to prep some brackets for both our windshield and our mirrors. So with these, we have the L brackets for the windshield. This is how you want them to look on each side, facing in. And then with the mirror mounts, these actually have a bend on them with these two holes at the bottom. And then the bend is also going to curve into the cab as well on both sides. And the stock bolts, they're going to take a 17mm socket, and the new ones are going to use a 19. Now we're going to take the M12 bolt that came with the windshield kit. We've got our washer on there, and we're going to go through the mirror mount. Then we have the L bracket that's going to slide on there. And then after that, we've got our spacer, and then we're going to thread this into the A-pillar. It might help to use an alignment punch to get these holes lined up. Now we're going to use a 19mm socket to tighten this hardware down. And with these brackets, if we need to adjust them later, we can always loosen this stuff back up and make our adjustments. And then we'll do those same steps on the other side. Next, we're going to install the mirrors. So to do that, we've got the longer bolt that came with them. You go through the mirror mount, then you've got your standoff or spacer. You're going to need a 13mm socket. Loosen up that bolt on the end. We will reuse that serrated washer. So I'll set that next to the spacer, and then we're going to thread that bolt into the mirror. And as you tighten everything down, you want to make sure the spacer is lined up with the mirror. Then you can make your final adjustments where you want it and tighten the bolt down. And then we'll do the same steps with the other mirror. Next, you need to prep your filler panel. We're just going to use the foam tape. You're going to cut it into 3 pieces and just go along that bottom edge where the folding glass windshield sits against it. Now to prep the folding glass windshield, we're going to install the bulb sill first. We've got 3 pieces, and the longer pieces are going to go on the outsides, and the shorter piece is going to go along the middle. So we're going to go ahead and push all 3 pieces on. Now as you put this on, it should be a snug fit as is, but if you need a tighter fit at any point, you can simply pinch this together. Now we need to assemble the vent door hardware. So I'm going to start with bracket A and bracket C. You want to sit them just like that. And then we have the button head bolts. These are going to come from the front side of the windshield, and then we'll install the nylock nuts on the back. And we're going to leave all the hardware loose for now. After that, you want to attach bracket B with a button head bolt and again a nylock nut. And then we're going to take our hand knob and our friction washer. I'm going to slide the hand knob into the slot in bracket B. We've got the friction washer on the other side, and we'll screw that into bracket A. So I'm going to tighten that down until I barely have friction, and then back that off just a little bit, and then we can adjust these brackets and tighten them down. Now keep in mind this bottom mount, we only want to tighten this nut until it lightly seats and then back it off about 1/8 of a turn. So once you have all the hardware tightened down, you want to loosen up the knob and make sure the door opens and closes smoothly. If it doesn't, you want to go back in and make adjustments. Now for the windshield wiper, we've got our mount. We've taken 1 nut, washer, and grommet off. We're going to put the other end of this through the windshield, and we'll reinstall those pieces, and we're going to use a 17mm wrench and a crescent wrench to snug these 2 nuts down. Next, we're going to take the knob. I'm going to go through the backside, and you want to make sure this is lined up with your wiper arm once you have everything assembled. This arm is spring loaded, so we're going to have to push this on. Then we're going to install the nut and tighten it down. Once you've done that, you can reinstall that cover, and then we're going to bring this over to the machine. Next, we're going to install the filler panel. To do that, we're using the M6 by 20mm bolts. We'll go through the filler panel, through that gusset in the frame, and then we've got a washer and a lock nut on the back side. And we're going to leave this hardware loose until we have everything installed so we can make adjustments. Next, you'll want to have a friend help you set the windshield in place. And we're going to install the 2 M8 by 20mm bolts on each side of the windshield through that L bracket. And then we have those flange nuts on the back side. After that, we're going to install the 2 hand knobs, but again, we're leaving these loose. And now that we have all the hardware loosely installed, we're going to adjust the windshield from side to side and get it centered. And then if you need to adjust the L brackets, you can go ahead and do that and get this thing where you want it for the best fitment. And then we're going to go through and tighten down all of the hardware. And it's the same thing with the filler panel. You want to adjust it side to side where you need it so you can remove and install the hand knobs easy, and then tighten down both of those bolts. And when you tighten these down, you always want to do the final tightening with the nut. Next, we need to install our standoff brackets. So I'm going to remove these knobs from the top. I'm going to flip them to the other side and screw in the standoff bracket so the rubber mount is facing towards the front of the machine when the windshield is folded down. And at this point, we need to put the brackets where we want them so they can rotate and they can also move side to side in that slot. So what I'm going to do now with the bracket in place, I'm going to mark around that edge there. We're going to do that in a couple spots. We could just mark the mounting holes, but this back one's kind of hard to reach. So I'm going to mark where the bracket goes and then go back in and mark both of these mounting holes before we drill anything out. Now we can take a 1/4 inch drill bit and drill the 4 mounting holes. Now we can take what should be the only 4 remaining bolts. We're going to go through the standoff brackets, through our mounting locations, and then we've got the washers and the nylock nuts on the back side. Now before we tighten the hardware down, we've got some slight adjustability with the brackets. So I'm going to fold the windshield down, make sure the holes line up with these brackets, and once I have everything where I want it, I'm going to tighten down the hardware. The last thing for the windshield is to make sure the hand knobs still work in the filler panel. Once you've done that, you can do the final tightening on the hardware in that filler panel. To prep the rear glass window, we need to install 4 pieces of bulb seal. Now we have all of these panels, they have the bends facing up right now, and these panels, the way they sit, they're going to face inside towards the cab. So that means this bulb seal needs to be facing up as well as we install it. So this longer piece, this is going to go across the top, and then we have 3 shorter pieces. So 2 for the side panels, and then this one's going to go across the bottom. And anywhere that it's really tight, you can use a soft face mallet to hit it into place. So now I'm going to move to the bottom of the rear window. And one thing I want to point out is if you find any spots that fit loose, you can simply pinch that bulb seal together, and that's going to give you that tighter fit. And now we'll move on to the side panels. Now to install the rear window, we're going to drop it in from the top, and the bottom you're going to want to have sitting in between your headrest and the air intake duct. Again, we have the roof mounting bolts loose, so we can pull that up a little bit to help out. Now we can take the 2 1.5 inch loop clamps, so the smaller ones in the kit. We're going to set this flat section of the clamp against the rear window. We're going to go around the roll cage, and once both of those are in place, we're going to use the M6 by 25 millimeter button head bolts. We've got a washer on them. Go through that rear window, through the clamp, and then we'll use that flange nut on the other side. And as you install the hardware, throughout the process, you want to leave it loose, and then we'll make our final adjustments and tighten everything down once we're done. Next, you're going to set the side panels in place, and the side panel is going to sit on the inside of that main panel. Then we're going to use the 3 M6 by 16 millimeter button head bolts with the washers on them. We're going to go through the main panel, through that side panel, and then you have the flange nut on the inside. And one tip for the middle bolt is to use a wrench to hold that nut while you screw it in place. Now on the outsides of your side panels, you have 2 mounting locations on each side for those loop clamps. And again, we're going to have the flat side of that sitting against the side panel. And on these, it's just like the top. You're using the M6 by 25 millimeter button head bolt, your washer, going through that panel, through the clamp, and then you've got that flange nut on the inside. Now that we have everything loosely installed, you can go ahead and move everything around and get it adjusted for the best fitment, and then tighten all of the hardware down. And once you have all the hardware tightened down for the rear window, you can finish tightening up your roof. Next, we're going to install our rock sliders, and to do that we need to gain access to the mounting locations. We're going to remove them from the body. So for the front and rear panels, you've got 12 screws that you need to remove, and then you've got 3 trim clips as well. So now that we have our rocker panels on the bench, we're going to use a 1 3/8 inch hole saw, or you can even use a 1 1/2 inch hole saw if you want a little bit of play to make some adjustments once the rock sliders are in place. I want to support the back side of the plastic with a wooden block, and like I mentioned before, you've got 5 dimples in the sides of these, and if you're not sure, on the back you're going to have a little ring, and that's exactly where you want to be drilling. And if you want to clean that up, you can use a little bit of sandpaper or even a round file. And then we're just going to do those same steps on the remaining 3 dimples. Now that we have our holes drilled, we're going to reinstall these panels the same way they came off. Now with the panels back in place, I'm going to install the driver's side rock slider first. We're going to start in the back, and I'm going to use the spacer. I'm going to set that in place, and we're using the longer bolt. And after that, we can move to the next most forward mounting location, and the rest of these are going to use the smaller bolts. Now that we have all of the bolts loosely installed, we're going to torque these down to 53 foot-pounds. That's how you install the Tusk Stage 3 UTV Upgrade Kit on your KRX4 1000. If you need one of these kits, they're available on our website. And as always, we offer free shipping on orders over $75. Now, with that being said, if you have any questions about this install process, leave those down in the comments below. And if you want to see more helpful content like this, make sure you subscribe to our channel. I'm Charles with Rocky Mountain ATV MC. Thanks for watching.